and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Today I'll be continuing with my college football schedule preview and point spread prediction videos with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So this is one of the toughest schedules in the country, and a much tougher schedule than Ohio State had last year. But it can't be the toughest schedule in the country because when you rank how tough a schedule is, you have to also go by how good that team is supposed to be. And for example, if a team like Purdue had this schedule, it would no doubt be the toughest in the country because Purdue isn't any good. But Ohio State, you already know without even watching them play a game that they're going to be a top 10 team, probably even better than that. So they have seven new conference opponents than they did last year. So last year they played Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. And instead, this year they will play Iowa, Maryland, Indiana, USC, Oregon, Northwestern, and Nebraska. And the most unusual thing about this schedule is they're not playing Penn State for the first time since 1992. And if I was an Ohio State fan, I would have much rather have played Penn State than Indiana or Oregon. But this year they're playing two teams that are going to be preseason top three, most likely, Indiana and Oregon. And last year they only played one team in those seven opponents that they don't play this year, and that was a borderline top 25 team in Washington. And this year they're going to play three preseason top 20 teams when you include USC in this seven new games, and four preseason top 25 teams when you include Iowa. And this time in these new seven games, they only get to play two of the worst teams in the Big Ten, Maryland and Northwestern, while last year they got to play four of the worst teams, Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. But I think the bye week does come at a good time, probably in between the toughest two-game stretch on this schedule, back-to-back road games against Indiana and USC. Although the two-game stretch of USC on the road and then Oregon at home is pretty close to as tough. And if I was an Ohio State fan, I actually would have rather have seen the bye week come between USC and Oregon because it's hard for me to imagine Lincoln Riley putting out a defense good enough to be able to stop Ohio State very much. And the way Ohio State's defense is, they're going to find ways to stop you no matter how good your offense is. So if you can't stop them, Ohio State is going to win and probably pretty comfortably. But the Indiana, USC, and Oregon three-game stretches. But while I've not looked at anywhere near all the schedules for 2026, it has to be one of, if not the toughest three-game stretch in the country. And their non-conference schedule is even tougher this time because not only do they have to play Texas again, they have to play them at Texas. But the two games against Ball State and Kent State. Those are their two 100% guaranteed wins because those are group of five opponents or group of six, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not giving a prediction right now for the Ohio State Texas game, but I will say that I'm pretty sure that there'll be more points scored in this Ohio State Texas game than there was last year. But I do wonder how much the quarterbacks really improved after this game last season. Because, well, Arch Manning was the biggest disappointment in that game. Julian Sayin did not play well in that game either, especially with as bad as Texas's secondary turned out to be. And while Arch Manning played a lot better in the second half of the season, it was mostly against weak competition. When he played against Georgia late in the season, he played like he did against Ohio State. Now, I know he played well against Texas A&M, who had a very solid defense, but not even their defense was near as good as Ohio State's was. And Julian Sayin played good against weak competition after the Texas game, except for Michigan, and not even their defense was elite last year. But then when he played against elite defenses, Indiana and Miami, he played like he did against Texas. Now, their defenses were a lot better than Texas's was last year. And if you look at his numbers, he did throw for a good amount of yards against both Indiana and Miami, but that's actually deceiving. If you watch those games, you know that Sayin was not very effective in uh, them. Now, Arch Manning did play well also in the bowl game against Michigan, but Michigan's defense in that one was missing several of their best players. And on the road at Iowa, I can't quite say it's a 99.9% guaranteed win for Ohio State because Iowa is one of the most consistently good programs in college football. You just know they're going to win at least 8 games, but they do never beat the best teams in the conference like Ohio State. So that's why I'd say it is close to that much of a guaranteed win. Although they did almost upset Oregon when Oregon came over to Iowa last year. So when you look at this Northwestern game, you probably think it's a guaranteed win, and you're not wrong by that. Ohio State will 99.9% sure win this game. But there's something interesting about this game that, unless you're a college football nerd like me, you probably don't even know about. So, Northwestern's offense has been garbage for a long time, but that could be changing this year because they hired someone to be their offensive coordinator that if you're an Ohio State fan, you should be pretty familiar with. Chip Kelly, who was the offensive coordinator on that 2024 Ohio State national championship team. But Chip Kelly won't have near the talent to work with on offense at Northwestern that he had at Ohio State. And good news for Ohio State is there's no one that knows Chip Kelly's offense better besides himself than Ryan Day does. Because not only did they work together very recently, Chip Kelly actually coached Ryan Day in college. But also Maryland and Illinois and Nebraska, I'd say are 99.9% guaranteed wins for Ohio State because Ryan Day is not one of those coaches that loses games that he's not supposed to lose. He's been the head coach at Ohio State 7 years and has one loss to an unranked team, and that was against Michigan. And as big of a rivalry as that is, that you can barely even count that. But the Michigan game is always the biggest game of the year for Ohio State, no matter how good either team is. Uh, and even though they finally got past them last year and the games at home, and Ohio State's only lost at home 3 times since Ryan Day has been there. This is still a concerning game if you're Ohio State because two of those three losses came against Michigan. So you may be wondering why I consider Illinois to be pretty much a guaranteed win and not USC when Illinois has been a better team than that USC has the last couple of years. But the reason is talent. Uh, Illinois, even though they've gotten a lot better, they still do not have a lot of talent. And USC has enough talent on the roster that if Lincoln Riley can finally put it all together, they could beat Ohio State and not just in a fluke way. And I know you may be wondering, what about Indiana? Because they don't have a ton of talent on the roster, but that's because they have Kirk Cincinnati, who's on a different level than everybody. So now for the point spread prediction. If there's a minus at the beginning of the spread, that means Ohio State is the favorite. And if there's a plus at the beginning of the spread, that means that they're the underdog. So a 20 plus spread is a blowout. And there's four of those: Ball State, Kent State, Maryland, and Northwestern. A 10 to 19 spread means it's medium, and there's four of those: Illinois, Iowa, USC, and Nebraska. A 6 to 9 spread is close, and there's one of those: Michigan, and a 1 to 5 spread is very close, almost a toss up, and there's three of those: Texas, Indiana, and Oregon. So Ball State and Kent State, Ohio State will be favored, I'd say, by 40 points, or probably even more than that. And Maryland, I think Ohio State will be favored by like 4 touchdowns. And Northwestern, I'd say like a 24-point spread. And Illinois, I'd say Ohio State by about 17. And Iowa, I'd say the spread will be about 13. And USC, the spread in that one will probably be more like 10 points. And Nebraska, I'd say about 14 points. And Michigan, I'd say 6 points for the spread. And if that was a road game, that would be in the 1 to 5 range. And I think there's a good chance anyway that when it comes time for that game to be played, that it's in the 1 to 5 range. But why I have Illinois at 17 points in Nebraska and only 14 is because Nebraska's a road game and Illinois is a home game. And Texas, I'd say the spread in that one will be about 3 points. And Indiana, I'd say, will be a 3 point favorite about over Ohio State. But if it was a home game, I'd say it'd be the other way around. And Oregon, I'd say the spread will be 3 points, but those two teams are close enough that if it was a road game, I think Oregon would probably be favored by like a point. But this schedule, I think, is too tough for Ohio State to go 12 and 0 again. I'd say 11 and 1 would be the best case. But Ohio State is so talented and well coached that I'm very confident that they can at least get to 10 and 2 and back to the college football playoff. So that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.